Hello and welcome to another brand new episode of the Empower MEN1 podcast. I am super excited to have with me today Jane, who has very generously agreed to come on and share all about her story of health, her journey with healing over the past few years, which I find inspiring. And I know, having spoken to Jane myself many times in Connected Over Health, that there are a lot of nuggets of wisdom and some golden things that she can share with us all. I won't take the microphone. I will let Jane do the rest. Jane, welcome. It's super cool to have you here.
And thank you, Lizzie. I'm really pleased to be here. So, as you say, we've got lots of things in common, I think. So the crossover, I think it's quite fascinating, isn't it? So my journey is I got diagnosed with triple positive breast cancer back in 2017. Prior to that, in 2015, I went to a yoga juice fast in Portugal. And that was a 10-day affair. And I can remember at the end of it thinking to myself, this is the fittest I've ever been. And, my yoga practice was good. Everything was strong. My health was good. Fast forward to December, I started feeling sick and not very well. And then by January, I went to bed and there was avian bird flu around. I remember that year, and doctors were telling you just to stay in bed. So I did. And then I started getting pains in my left shoulder. So I went to see a physio that I go to, and they thought I had a frozen shoulder. And I went to the doctor and he said the same. And the pain kept increasing to the extent I went up to the hospital in April, and they told me I was a hypochondriac and I had to man up, that they were the fourth people to tell me I had a frozen shoulder. And then in the May, I collapsed and got rushed into hospital, and I ended up with an undetected burst appendix. So going from feeling really fit in the October, by the May next year, I was in hospital a month and in 3 days in intensive care and a month in hospital. So that was the start of a journey that's been going on for 7 years for me of really chronic ill health, having gone from being really well. So that took a while to get over. But I did, and came out of hospital, and life slowly got back together. And then 18 months later, I got diagnosed with a breast cancer diagnosis, which was a bit of a shock for me, and I thought, that's not fair. I just had all this ill health with the appendix, which had major surgery for that. So I had the breast cancer diagnosis, and it was a triple positive breast cancer, which 1 in 5 breast cancers are triple positive, and that's where you're estrogen and progesterone positive, the hormones, and also you have a HER2 protein receptor, which is responsible for the cell growth within the breast tissue. So that's quite an aggressive, fast-growing cancer. So the three together get called triple positive. So that's what I was diagnosed with on a Friday afternoon, and I remember sitting in the oncologist's office, and I actually laughed and I went, oh no, because they look at you. I don't know if you found this, Lizzie, when you go up to the hospital, sometimes you get the look, and it's not good news when you get the look. And there was the breast nurse and the oncologist, and they told me off for laughing and not taking it seriously. And I said, well, I don't really understand what you're talking about, because they were talking about suddenly all about surgery and radiation and chemo and oral chemo drugs, and HER2 has a specific drug for itself as well, Herceptin. So they were telling me all about this and the type of breast surgery they wanted to do, and when they wanted it all to start, which was about 3 weeks later, or 2 weeks later, actually. And I just sat there because I'd planned to go on a road trip the next day, 3 months through Spain and France, or France and Spain. So I told them that I couldn't possibly have the surgery then, because I was going away for 3 months. So they said I couldn't go. So I think, Lizzie, as you know me, if I don't like being told what I can and can't do. So I said, well, I'm sorry, I am going. I said, well, I'll go on Sunday instead of Saturday. I'll go and tell everyone and go away and think what to do. So the oncologist, my oncologist was a bit like Michael McIntyre. He's very funny. He even looked like him, actually. And he did have a sense of humor. And I said, well, I am going. So he said, well, let's have a compromise and go away for 2 weeks and come back, and then I'll book you in for surgery for 3 weeks' time. So I agreed to that. In my head, I'm going, I don't know, I'm just going to say yes to get out of here. So that's what I did. And then I did indeed go home, told people on the Friday and Saturday, and I left for France on the Sunday. And while I was in in France in a little restaurant by Notre Dame, having a nice carafe of wine and a beautiful table d'hote meal. I'm sitting there thinking, oh, life's good. And then a little voice came in my ear and it went, well, this is good, isn't it, Jane? What are you doing? You know, you've got breast cancer. And I don't know, I think when you have a serious health diagnosis, sometimes you go into that denial phase, which I think that was definitely me. So I thought, well, I need to do something about this. So I cancelled the rest of my accommodation in France, and I'd had a place booked in Spain. So I drove through the night and landed up in Spain 3 a.m. So I got myself a large gin and tonic, sat on the beach, drank that and thought, right, okay, tomorrow is the day you start working out what you're going to do. So that's when I started working out my plan for what I was going to do with this breast cancer diagnosis. So that's the sort of when I got it and where I was to then, sat on the beach at 3 a.m. So yeah, there was quite a journey in that short space of time.
It sounds like it. And if you don't mind me asking you now, what since that point where you realized, okay, I've got to do something about this, what did that journey look like from then?
Right. So because of the time I'd had in hospital, and I'm not anti-pharmaceuticals or conventional at all, they saved my life with the appendix, but because I ended up with emergency midline surgery, so I've got like a 10-inch scar from my pubic bone up to 2 inches past my belly button. I had drains, and I had such a severe infection, I had sepsis, that I was hooked up to oral antibiotics, IV antibiotics, fluid. It was very painful, and I got a massive infection from it as well, because they spent 4 hours trying to clear the infection out from the sepsis, and then they didn't get it all. Then I developed a big subphrenic abscess. I couldn't breathe, and it was touch and go whether I actually lived through that. And I did end up with a frozen shoulder. So through all that, I couldn't move because of the surgery, and I couldn't move my arm either. And when I started thinking about what the surgeon had recommended for the breast cancer, I asked him the question, did it involve drains? Because one of my drains had sort of started growing in. So when they took the drains out, it was like pain I'd never known. And so as soon as he said I'd have drains with the breast surgery, in my head, I'm thinking, I can't go back for that. So I think when I sat there, I thought, I've got 2 choices. I go back and have all that treatment, or I need to find another way around it. So I decided then and there I was going to try and find a way around that so that I didn't have to go back. And as I said, it's not because I don't trust the medicals, it's just I couldn't face any more time in hospital, or being poked about, and I don't know, it just, I think it freaked me out a bit, really. So I then decided the next day to start researching and seeing what was actually out there on a alternative method, on a more natural healing method. So that's the path I took. So on the 17th of November this month, I was actually 6 years out from my original diagnosis, and I am cancer free now. So I've worked along that journey completely holistically, and it has been completely holistic. I've looked at absolutely everything in my life: mind, body, spirit, soul, food, diet, relationships, bringing in lots of complementary therapies. I've done, I've got my own raft of experts, which I know you consult with as well, and I do mine on my page. So I've done it alone, but I do it with expert guidance, and it's it's still a scientifically proven route. It's just not mainstream. So I think a lot of people, when they hear what I've done, don't quite understand the depth of what you have to do personally, because you don't get the support of the NHS. You don't have your breast nurse and regular treatments by the NHS. So you sort of go it alone. So you patch your own system together, which is what I've done myself. And thankfully it's worked for me.
The most incredible story, and I have to say, I can draw so many parallels between your experience and definitely mine. I think the one that resonates the most is when you talked about, it wasn't that you were anti medical, kind of conventional medicine, anti pharmaceuticals, anything like that. You just didn't want to go back to where you'd been before, and it was exactly the same with me. And I think it's a very interesting crossroads you're faced with at that point. I know my kind of stance going forwards from that point was, you know, to find a balance between the two. And that's something I'm always going to be navigating. I think it's interesting talking to you, having taken the completely holistic route, which, you know, and, you know, you seem to the naked eye so healthy, so well. And you've really, really worked on that. And, you know, there's, you know, that's not just a fluke. There's no fluke, there's no chance in anything. You've put, you know, so much into that. What would you say, you know, if you had to maybe narrow it down to, you know, one or two things, what do you think has been most influential in your journey of healing, sort of since that point where you decided, right, I've got to do this myself?
I think number one is mindset. You've really got to believe and truly believe that you can affect that change within your body. If you go at it with a, you know, a half and half attitude, well, I think I can, but I'm not sure, I wouldn't even attempt it. I had no doubt at all that I could do it. It was quite strange how determined and how that belief system that kicked in, that I could do this. I knew I could do it. I could picture it. So I think your belief system, especially when you are, you know, moving away from conventional ideas, you have to truly believe that that your body is capable of making that kind of a change if you work with it. So you've got to work with your body. So that'd be my first one. The second one I'd say is food. I think so many of us have no great awareness of the impact of food on our health. And I hate that expression, you know, you are what you eat, but you are literally what you eat. And if you're not feeding your body well with good organic nutrition, you know, you need to cook your own food. You need to drink juices. There's lots of things you can do to make really quick changes in your own body when you're sick. And I think, you know, a lot of illness, especially chronic illness, comes from a sick body, really. And if you've got cancer, you're sick. And I think, again, people who get cancer diagnosis don't think of it as a sick body. It's a something that's happened to them. We haven't caught cancer, you know, you don't catch it like a cold or measles. It's not something that comes from the outside, it's something that comes from the inside. So my great thought process was, if I've created it, surely there's some method of uncreating it. And because I'm quite body aware, I picked it up very early. And I think a lot of illness, if you get it when it's just occurred, be aware something's wrong, then you have a greater chance of you know, changing that result round. So the second one was food for me, and sort of just really being aware of your environment. You know, what kind of life are you living? Who's in your life? You know, who's serving you? Who's not serving you? Does your lifestyle serve you? Because again, a lot of chronic illness is caused by stress, which causes inflammation, which causes bodies to break down. So, you know, there's a big correlation between, you know, mind and food and environment. So for me, those are my three biggest key factors in what I was patching together, you know, with this journey that I went on. I mean, there's lots of other things in there, but they were my three takeaways, I think, from that.
How coincidental how coincidental they should happen to be mine as well. It's very interesting, and you talk about awareness, and that's obviously, I think, a word that jumps out, because we can think we're aware, but actually there's a different level of awareness, isn't there? And for me, it wasn't until I really found the inner work that I actually understood what awareness was. So you know, I'd seen gut specialists. I was aware of what I was putting inside my body. And, you know, cutting out the things I shouldn't have been eating and introducing more of the things I should. But actually, as you mentioned quite rightly, there's a whole thing going on up here at the same time. And I just wonder, you know, what is it in your experience, if you've, if there's something that you found to help you particularly, do you think that there is that sort of like, okay, I'm doing this thing externally from the outside, but actually internally that has to be matched by, you know, the thoughts that I'm running around my head, the beliefs that I have, and, you know, and the emotional home ultimately that, you know, those are creating for me? Do you think it's like a balance really of the internal and the external?
Yeah, I think everything's about balance, isn't it? If you're too far one way, you're missing something. And I'm a great listener of Abraham Hicks, and you know, I was listening to one this morning on financial abundance, you know, and she said, you know, like some people have loads of money, but other parts of their life are just really terrible. Then you've got other people who've got a loving life, but they've got no money. It's where you patch what you want and what your desires are, and where you act from that point. So for me, they say if you have a cancer diagnosis, you've got to look at life-changing events over the last 2 to 5 years. And when I look back at my life, God, I've had some huge life-changing events. And they talk about things like house moves, selling a business, bereavement, ill health. So because of my ill health, I had to sell my business. I couldn't cope anymore. So those were two major things. I nearly lost my life, and I lost my livelihood. So I lost my home, I lost my income, and where I was living. So all of that, when you factor in the lifestyle that I led, I was a bit of a kind of work and play 24/7. I was a very busy person, so I worked hard and played hard. I'm a very giving person. I overstretched a lot of the time, and I think once you get a diagnosis, I mean, it's slightly different with yours because a cancer, I know yours has got similarities, but I can actually look back and piece these bits together. And I think if you don't come together with how you're thinking and how you're acting and how you're living, I don't think anything works really. And it's not until you become aware of that you can actually start doing anything about it. And I think the route I took with all the things I was reading about, I very quickly came to the conclusion that unless I believed it, unless I acted it and lived it, it wasn't going to happen. And that you go into victim mode very easily as well. It's like, poor me, why is this happening to me? It's not fair. Well, it isn't fair. It's not nice. But at the end of the day, it's there. So I think for me, it was like a real turnaround of, right, okay, let's have a look. Let's pull apart my whole life and piece it back together. And that's what I did step by step. I had the worst, most horrendous withdrawal symptoms because I had to come off my HRT as well, which I've been on for 16 years because I had triple positive. So I had an estrogen and progesterone positive cancer. So I got thrown into menopause, plus stripping out all my foods and alcohol and sugar and tea and coffee. I was like a nut job, honestly, for weeks, sweat pouring off me, steam coming off me. It was quite, I mean, it sounds funny, and it is funny looking back, but it didn't feel it at the time. But, back to your question, you really do need to piece the whole thing together to make something work. You can't be lazy, I think is the word about it as well. You have to be committed, or be committed.
Absolutely. Yeah, full commitment, full results is the way I like to look at it. Just when you were saying about things being funny or not being funny, I was thinking about what you said at the beginning when your reaction to the diagnosis in the oncologist's office was one of kind of laughter. I mean, what do you think that was at the time? You spoke about potentially kind of some denial that it was happening. Maybe that was a little bit later on when you were traveling, but what do you think it was that made you laugh? Because that's not the way that most people are going to respond to a cancer diagnosis, particularly not triple positive.
No, I think you know me a little, Lizzie, and I do have a bit of a odd sense of humor, and I do find dire situations, I think it's I don't know, I need to delve into that really, but they do make me laugh. When I'm supposed to be really serious, I find that really difficult. And because it was about me, it wasn't offending anyone but I mean, I just sat there and I actually said, you're having a laugh, because I thought, no, I'm going, because I didn't want anything to interfere with my going away. And I just sat there and I think I was incredulous. And they were talking about, everything I needed, like lollipop surgery, because they were going to do, oh God, not a mastectomy. What's the other one called? Can't even think of the word.
The hysterectomy.
No, that's your womb.
Oh.
No, I've had one of those. They were going to do a lumpectomy, that's the word. Lollipop surgery. So he was explaining how they were going to do it, and then he was then talking about, because of that kind of surgery, I could have free reconstruction on my other breast, like it was like I just won the lottery, oh, lucky me, we'll do this to that one, and then you can have a matching pair at some. And I just sat there and thinking, there's a man talking to me, and he told me how even my breasts were, and I was sitting there thinking, this is just bizarre. You're talking as a man sitting looking at your breasts and telling you all this stuff and how they're going to do the surgery. And And then they told me the drug they wanted to take, which is for her too. And it felt like matching shoes and handbag. You know, you've got this, and we can give you that. And I just found that situation, and I suppose the processing of it is because it's a big piece of information. And for me, I'd rather look at it on the light side than sit and cry, because I think if you go down the crying side, you get into a real dark emotional place. Whereas if you keep it, it's not that I wasn't taking, or like I was taking it in, but not taking it in. But for me, I think that's just a natural reaction, how I cope with things. And yeah. So.
It's funny because I had I mean, the details are quite different, but a situation where, so my second round of pancreatic surgery, when I was told about it, even though the kind of there isn't quite so much kind of doom and gloom about MEN1, because generally it's very well managed and they catch things before anything gets too serious. I just remember thinking, not right now. It's like, I've got my, you know, Oxbridge application. I'm meant to be going skiing in February, this, that. And it's so funny because I think, you know, that was what was my priority at that time. You know, it was like the health can wait. The health can wait. And then having finished my surgery, and I think I went in for my kind of 6-week checkup, and the thing I was absolutely determined to ask was, can I still go skiing in 6 weeks' time? I mean, that's a whole different story, and whether that was sensible or not, I have no idea. It's a conversation for another time. But I think you're right. I think in those sorts of situations, we do respond just, you know, in the way that we need to at the time. And I think there is such a dialogue around like how these things should happen. And maybe that's what the kind of the look you were referring to is all about, because you're expected, or we feel there's an expectation to respond in a certain way. And actually, it's not going to land with everyone in the same way. It just won't do, because everyone's going to be in a different place in their life, and it's going to mean something different in their life. So I really, really, you know, I get you.
Yeah. And I think, you know, the name cancer, you know, the very word evokes fear in most people. And a lot of people survive it, you know, and if you look at all the cancer research documents, you know, cancer is 70 to 75% of it is lifestyle and environmental. It's not a death sentence. I mean, it is. A lot of people die from it, but there's so much you can do. So I think if we could, if only the, you know, the medical establishments could work a bit closer with the, you know, calling them alternative establishment, who aren't really alternative, they're just more back to basics. I think we could find a much better way through for everybody, because by mixing good health and you know, good housekeeping in your own body aligned with medical treatments, I think, you know, to put people in that fear state, immediately they think they're going to die. And I think that's what happens with most cancer diagnoses. When you get one, your people's immediate reaction is, I'm going to die. That's not very healthy. It's not very productive, and it puts you in that downward spiral. So for me, I think, you know, the whole medical profession needs to lighten up a bit. And, you know, when you look at the results that people, you know, all right, if you've got a stage 4 diagnosis and you're metastasized all over your body, then yes, you're in a bit of a dire situation. But even people come back from that by putting that thought process in that you're going to die, you're already hitting a block before you start. So you really need to unravel that and think, right, no, I'm not dead yet, I'm here. You know, and a cancer like a breast cancer tumor can take 10 years to form. It's there in the making for a long time. But, you know, mine was just under 2 centimeters. So if it's been growing for 10 years, why suddenly have I got to have everything done within 2 weeks? I'm not going to die within 2 weeks, am I? So it's just the mental process, I think, that the medical profession need to do a little bit of work on when they're actually, because I think they forget they're talking to people. They do it all the time. And I think, you know, I'd never heard of all these things before. So it's probably why I wasn't particularly scared either, because I didn't know anyone with breast cancer. I didn't understand the terminology. So it was just a load of words to me, apart from the cancer bit. So, you know, I think, you know, again, things we do, like talking like this and just giving a more open view on what's possible. And everyone needs to take responsibility for their own life and how they heal. It's not for us to tell anyone what to do, but I think there's a lot of pointers out there that can sort of open up a whole world that you didn't know existed, really. And that's what I found, you know, this whole world that I didn't know was there. and all the specialists that work within it. It's quite fascinating. It's good fun in a way, if you want to turn it again to a more light-hearted way. And I'm not being flippant, but I made myself my project. So by making myself my project, I got fascinated into what was going on in my body. So therefore, it gave me something to do rather than just be sick. And I think that's, for me, well, it's worked. So that's my way of dealing with life, I think.
I love that, making yourself into your project. And it does bring an element of fun into it. And I agree, I feel even uncomfortable saying that here, because I'm like, oh my gosh, how could you make something lighthearted out of something serious? But actually, there's so much to learn. I love learning, and I love speaking to people like you, and I love hearing all perspectives. Actually, I think everything is valuable. And I very much agree about bringing what we label alternative together with the conventional, because ultimately everything has its place. It's only that if we were to stop pitting them against each other and actually start to see the similarities, where the similarities are and where the differences are, and where those two can kind of mesh together, I think that's the future, really. But I think it will take some big changes. But I think you and I might be at the head of that. I don't want to say too much, but
yeah, and I think there is greater moves to integrative medicine, especially in the cancer field. There is more movement, like they're introducing Reiki and other holistic therapies now into cancer centers. So I think they are slowly recognizing that this mind body spirit connection isn't just a fuzzy out there concept. It's actually and now with science we can measure vibration, we can measure what's going on, so the two are coinciding quite a lot more now. And I think we've got to be more open in the societies that we live in now, because it certainly isn't getting better. If we're looking at 1 in 2 will have a cancer diagnosis within their lifetime, that's every other person. Whereas back in the 1900s, it was like 1 in hundreds. Something's changed for us to be getting such high incidence of these chronic illnesses. And cancer is now viewed as a chronic illness. People can live with it for years, but it's not the most healthy state to be living in. So, I think there's a lot we can do just by chatting, really, and being open about all sides, because each side's got its merit, hasn't it?
It absolutely has indeed. It has indeed. I can't believe how quickly the time has run away with us. I have one final question, which I ask to all my guests, which is if you could go back to you at any point in your healing journey, your recovery journey, your health, and tell that version of you one thing, maybe that you didn't know then, or something you've learned, a piece of advice, what would it be?
I think when you're younger, as in like where you are, I think we often think that we're invincible, that, we look at older people and think, oh God, I'll never be like that. And you live your life to the full, which you should. But for myself, I was a big work hard, play hard person, and I really did think I was invincible. And I did drink a bit too much. I used it as a bit of a crutch emotionally, and because I was so busy all the time. And I've also had very hospitality-led work life. So I've always been around events. I've organized events. I was in horse racing, things like that. So I've lived quite a fast lifestyle. And I think, especially when you get to sort of pre and menopausal age, and I've talked to, I have a women's health specialist that I work with as well on my health. And she said, you'd be amazed to hear how many middle-aged women who are drinking a bottle plus of wine a night, have no idea what illnesses they're leading themselves into. And breast cancer has a big correlation with alcohol consumption. So, one of my bits of advice or learnings would be that, we're not invincible. And at some stage, you need to rein things back in. Otherwise, you could possibly end up in the situation I'm in. And I think after my appendix, I then thought, right, it's my time. I'm just going to go and be mad for a while. I did the wrong thing because my body was weak. My immune system was down. I should have spent that time rebuilding my body back and getting myself healthy, not just pretending nothing had happened, which is, I think, it's that burying the head in the sand. And I think we need to be very aware. If I'd have been more aware of myself then, who knows, I might not have got the breast cancer diagnosis, but that's, no one knows that. But for me, that would be the thing as you get older. And I laugh about it with my sons, because they watch me and they think, yeah, we'll just keep an eye on ourselves as we get a bit older, just and I think we do. Our bodies can't respond as quickly or as healthily as they are when you're younger. So that would be my main take.
I think that's valuable, really valuable for me to hear as a young person, but also just for anyone, because I think it's very true. Absolutely. Take care of yourself in the moment, and then you don't have to take care of your future self when you get there.
Yeah, exactly.
Jane, if people want to find you for any reason, perhaps they've been inspired by your story, or they think you might be able to help them in any way with anything they're going through, where is the best place to find you?
I do have a website, and on there is a contact form. So that's themccourtmethod.com. And I come under the McCourt method. So it's kind of my journey. And I'm also on Facebook as Jane McCourt, but I also have healing breast, a breast cancer page on there as well. So yeah, but my Facebook page is public as well. So you can find me on that, and then you can get linked in to the other things. But if anyone wants to contact me, either DM me on Facebook or just do the contact form on my website.
Super. Well, it's certainly an incredible story, yours. And every time I hear it, I pick up on something different, and I think, wow, this Jane, she knows what she's doing. And as I say, I'm fortunate enough to have a friendship with you. I really, really hope that anyone who's listening back, there's, as I say, a nugget of wisdom or two that you're able to take from this conversation. Thank you, Jane, for so generously giving your time and sharing with us your story. I definitely think yours is a voice we'll want to have around again at some point. And I wish you all the best with your health and your adventures and everything going forwards.
Well, thank you very much, Lizzie. I've really enjoyed it, actually. It's been good fun to touch base.